Look, guys, unless my eyes are very mistaken, it's my beautiful port. You know, I was walking around the boardwalk in Seattle. It's pretty empty out there, dude. The Harbor Island or the Freight Island or whatever they call, like the artificial island they built to
On this episode of
wow,
What
sorry, the artificial island they built to have all the shipping containers loaded up on into it so they can be loaded onto trains. It was not stacked that high.
What's going on with shipping, we update the situation in U.S. ports as of May 1st, 2025. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So I've been dealing with a lot of social media saying that, number one, U.S. ports are empty. Second, that ships are no longer sailing from China for the United States, that ships are turning around and heading away, and you name it. It's been a lot. And I go into great detail on one of my most recent videos, what's going on with the U.S.
I swear to God, yesterday I saw an empty container ship come in. Because the big container ships, they have schedules. They can't just wait in one place forever. They're expected to be at certain places at certain times. So I think like a ship was coming into port and it was empty and it looked like a container ship. I don't know if it was a container ship though.
Ports. I'll have the link above there. You can go take a look at it, where I break down all those individual issues. But I have to tell you that when you look at the data out there, and let me be clear, I'm a former merchant mariner, worked both afloat and ashore. I've got a master's in maritime studies, a PhD in maritime history, and I run a YouTube channel called What's Going On with Shipping.
Has
for 4
China
years.
just embargoed us? No, we embargoed us. They're not embargoing us. We embargoed us. It's our tariffs.
I teach a course in maritime industry policy at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. I kind of know a little bit about this, maybe more than the social media person who's just figured out that there's a ship tracking app like this. This is marine traffic.
I'm getting
I've
called
cleaned
out.
this up. This shows you all the tankers, those in red, and container ships and cargo ships and bulkers in green heading to the United States. And if you clean this up even a little bit more, this is all the container ships heading to the United States. Notice ships sailing from East Asia here, out of China, a whole line of them coming out here, doing this big Great Circle route across the Pacific, heading across here. You can see ships YM upward heading for LA. This is the CGM Lincoln heading for Los Angeles. You will also see ships coming around the Cape of Good Hope here. They're coming this way because of the Houthi blocking traffic here. So you've got these ships.
Yeah, that hasn't even been remotely addressed. It's very possible the Red Sea will never be used, at least not within a long time, never be used for international travel again, meaning that every single ship that wants to make it to the American East Coast from Southeast Asia, they have to go around the, Cape of Africa. That's going to hurt Egypt's economy. Yeah, it is. It's also going to politically polarize Egypt because they're getting hurt because of Houthi instability, and the Houthis are unstable because of Israel or through the Panama Canal. I think sometimes ships will go from China and then down through the Panama Canal and then up again to like Washington or whatever, but I think for a lot of them that's not as viable as because the best route for a long time has been through the Red Sea, so they're just altering the route. It's adding like an extra week, So political success for the Houthis so far, yeah. I mean, if their goal was to disrupt international trade, yeah. It only adds about a week to the trip because there's so much queuing involved with the Suez Canal. Only a week? This mother... Don't worry, it only adds a week of travel time per every ship moving freight from one side of the world to the other.
Ships coming up here from Asia via that route, and then you have ships coming across from Europe. So there are still container ships heading to the United States and U.S. ports. There is going to be a drop, as we talked about the other day. We're expecting a 35% drop in the port of LA and probably in the port of Seattle in that full week of May coming up. So when we hit that first full week in May, we're going to see it. We'll see it on the East and Gulf Coast probably about 2 weeks later because of the time it takes to sail around Africa to get to that area. So that's what we're seeing now. I should note that we're also seeing a bit of an uptick in orders. This is put out by Steno Research for Bloomberg, and it shows you the total container ship tonnage and the laden container ship tonnage. This is coming out of China. So, you know, what you're seeing here is the difference between the light blue and the black is indicating to you space on board the vessels. So what you saw here back in February and March, it ticking up. Ships were not at full capacity at the time, but the overall number of tonnage was increasing. Then right around mid-April, we saw it drop off, and this is coinciding with the implementation of the 145% tariff coming out of China. But it's this figure right here that we're seeing at the end of April, this uptick again, that we may be seeing cargo coming back toward the United States in order. Remember, even with a 145% tariff, some items are still going to be cheaper to get from China than anywhere else. It could be an item that is only manufactured in China, or it could be an item that you can't get enough time with.
Like iPhones. iPhones sold in the US will no longer come from China as Apple reveals impact of Trump's tariffs. Yeah, Apple's work with Foxconn has been extensive and well documented, but they're just going to get them made elsewhere, like India or whatever. And also expect a significant increase in price because it's going to take a long time for Indian and Vietnamese factories to adopt and build out the tooling and expertise necessary to meet the quality requirements for an iPhone. Decreasing quality is unacceptable for a product like that because everyone can just use their current iPhone, right? Nobody would accept Apple coming out and saying, hey, our next iPhones cost the same but are shittier because we haven't developed the same supply lines or whatever, so we had to cut some corners. So they're going to be a lot more expensive, not just because of the tariffs, but also because they're not going to be able to produce as many of them. It's going to take them longer to produce them.
Without getting it out of China, and they may be thinking that maybe these tariffs are starting to come off, and therefore we're going to go ahead and do it. This is a chart out by Descartes that measures U.S. container import volume. I want to note a couple of things here on this chart. Here is March of 2025. We're just finished April, so we don't have those numbers yet. But notice 2025 has been substantially higher than almost every other year, except for higher than 2021, except for maybe 2022. If you go to 2024, the end of 2024 was one of the highest end years too. So what does that mean? A lot of front loading, a lot of cargo has been sent over to the United States ahead of the tariffs. When you look at a port like LA and Long Beach and you see these container ships offloading, they go into the terminals here, and you see right here, this is the APM terminal, but you have rail and road right here. A lot of that material is going out of LA and Long Beach all the way up here over to what's called the Inland Empire. This is Ontario. This is just an endless end of warehouses. And so a lot of these warehouse capacity areas have been filled up, and it's not just in Ontario, it's all throughout the United States, because 2/3 of the cargo that come into LA and Long Beach gets sent long haul across.
It makes me so sad to think about how we've developed an infrastructural network that is a miracle beyond miracles. It is the, like, whatever people like soy jack over the Roman Empire, whatever. This is like infinity more than that. The ability, like the fact that we have at Los Angeles millions of tons of goods, and then we have train networks that stretch across the country, and the trucks and everything goes everywhere, and so much of it is wasted on absolute bullshit. It's such a shame, man. If you took the productive and logistical capabilities of the human race and you just a simple requirement, make sure the basics are met first. Basics first, rest of it afterwards, you run away with it. Simple requirement, difficult to implement, yes, but if you could just set that requirement in, it would be heaven on earth for everyone. Everyone alive. It would take a while to build it out in places like India, still rapidly growing and developing and stuff, but you know, it would happen.
The United States, because the vast majority of the U.S. population is east of a line from North Dakota to Texas. That brings me to the site I want to show you today, which I think is going to be absolutely crucial if you want to follow what's going on. You can go into all the individual ports, but as I've showed you in my previous video here, all the ports are different. They all measure things differently. They have different metrics. It's really
Temu to stop selling goods from China directly to U.S. customers. Really? I guess that makes sense. The online marketplace says sales will now be handled by locally based sellers with orders fulfilled from within the country. Yeah, that makes sense. Temu's popularity is going to plummet because people are getting the tariff surcharge, increasing everything's cost by like to 250% of what it was before. And Temu doesn't really have the the prestige or the brand clout to compel people to pay more when they have those tariff costs, right? Like, people are willing to buy cheap plastic bullshit from Temu because it's super cheap. But now that it's not super, super cheap, people are going to have to be sort of argued into buying the cheap plastic shit from American companies. They'll pay more, but they'll think they're getting better things. In reality, it's all the same, like, effectively drop shipping scheme. But, you know, plastic is plastic. That's true.
Difficult to sort that out. So why not go to a centralized source? Well, there just happens to be one for you. This is the Bureau of Transportation Statistics latest supply chain and freight indicators. Remember when everything went to crap during the supply chain crisis? Well, that's what they did. They decided to kind of put all this together so that you would have that measurements at you. I'm going to show you a couple of key charts you should look at. This shows you loaded import containers at select U.S. ports in TEUs. Those are 20-foot equivalent units. Most containers are 40-foot equivalent units, so 2 TEUs. But this has all the ports. This shows you the loaded containers coming in. There's the data for March of 2025. So you have Los Angeles right there. You have New York, New Jersey. You have Long Beach. You have Savannah, and you have Houston. Those are kind of the four.
Tariffs are hitting the VTube fans hard. Ah, damn. I can't say this out loud. VTuber bullshit. 181, shipping 9108, duties 327.25, tax 1362, total $612.95. Jesus Christ. That is whew. It's not worth it. Well, maybe it is to them. Maybe it's all they have going on. I just saw a big political thread on r/all from the HoloLive subreddit. Basically, everyone was like, Trump. That's funny. That's funny.
Big terminals that exist. LA Long Beach together, which is the behemoth of them all. And then you have all the other ones. You have New York, New Jersey, you have Savannah, and you have Houston. And then down here, you've got the smaller ones. Port of Virginia, basically Norfolk, Charleston. You have SeaTac, that's Seattle and Tacoma. So you can look at individual ports if you want. So if you come to Seattle, Tacoma, let's just look at Seattle, Tacoma. This shows you it. So March of 2025, 109,000 TEU came in. And then you can very quickly, you can pull this data up through other sources. But here you can pull up March of 2024, March 2023, even lower than before. Come over to March 2022, up much higher, but this is during the height of the supply chain crisis. So those numbers are going to be skewed a little bit. Let's go over here to March of 2020, down substantially at that time. March of 2019, roughly about there. But it allows you to kind of take a look at this. So you can get all the information you want. And so when the April numbers come in, we should be in a good position to measure how the impact of the tariffs is happening. You can do the same for exports here, exports coming out. So for example, the biggest exporter you see is Houston. That's because of largely grain and other material coming out. Then you see Savannah, you see New York, New Jersey, Los Angeles. Los Angeles and LA, Long Beach are actually low in terms of exports. They export, the biggest exports is air, empty containers. They send empty containers back. About every 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 containers, depending on when you're looking at it, are empty coming out. And then you'll see the other ports here, Port of Virginia down here. You'll see Oakland here thrown in there, SeaTac and Charleston down here. So you can see them all. And again, you can measure them individually so that you can compare and actually not listen to someone who just discovered, marine traffic or one of the other vessel finding apps on social media. You can actually do this for yourself.
That's useful. Okay. I'm happy that I know this now. Okay. I'll keep this site, these resources in mind when we talk about it once we get the numbers in for April.
I'll give you another measurement that you should look at that almost nobody is talking about, and that is empty containers in the ports. So we have been importing a lot coming in. The problem has been getting the empty containers back out. Yeah, LA and Long Beach are funneling out empty containers, but the problem is they're not funneling them out fast enough. And what we're starting to see is a dangerous buildup of empty containers in U.S. ports. So right here, Long Beach, you'll see Los Angeles, you'll see New York, New Jersey, Savannah. And if you look at them historically, look at Long Beach right here at its highest level, even more so than during the supply chain crisis. And even L.A. is at close to its max level. Right here in August, you saw 364,000 containers, August of 2021, and here they're sitting at 349,000 containers. There's a finite number amount of containers around the world, and if you jam them up, having this kind of logjam here and not getting them out, that means there's not sufficient empty containers in East Asia to load. What this means
I feel like anyone whose job it is to pay attention to this sort of thing has to be some kind of command economy fanatic. Like, this level of chaos and the extent to which, like, our ability to transport vitals like medicine rely on, like, profitability margins for the movement of, like, empty storage containers around the world, it's absolutely terrifying. Just a little bit of a misread or a failed investment, a poor understanding of you know, what an appropriate amount of allocation is, a lie, someone looking to boost a report, one falsified number, one data point. It's insane. Look at his shirt, it tells you everything. It tells me that he's a serious person. Real engineers, real PhD holders wear ugly, floral print, non-camp collar, short sleeve button-up shirts. It's their favorite thing in the world. Practical engineering does it. They love that shit. They love it. I study supply chain right now. It's pretty consistent. We're all super paranoid tea leaf readers. Following this for my profession would give me a nervous disorder. This would make me very neurotic, okay?
Is if all of a sudden the tariffs end or they get reduced and all of a sudden we have a bullwhip effect and freight starts flowing to the United States really quick, we're going to have the ports jammed with empty containers. There's not going to be enough empty containers back in Asia to load, and we're going to go through a container shortage. Almost all containers are built in China and they're controlled by the Chinese. This came out in that U.S. Trade Representative Section 301 report. Last chart I'll show you is the number of container ships awaiting berths at U.S. ports. Remember back during the height of the supply chain crisis when there was over 100 ships waiting to get into LA and Long Beach? Well, here it is. This is what you're seeing here when we had all those ships. And right here at LA and Long Beach, you had about 109 ships. Oh, that's not showing it right there, but it's roughly around 109 ships back in January of 2022 waiting. So this huge, massive peak here, it continued on, and then all of a sudden it dropped. We've had a bit of a spike in it. Back in the early part of the year, we had containers waiting to get into U.S. ports. Why? Because of all that front loading coming in. And now what you see is it dropping off. And this means that we're not having ships waiting to come into berth. However, if all of a sudden we have that bullwhip effect that we talked about, that the tariffs come down, we jam the ports up with empty containers, we could have a repeat of what we saw back early during the supply chain. It doesn't mean you're going to run out of toilet paper. The reason we ran out of toilet paper had nothing to do with ships coming across. Most toilet paper is made in the United States. The reason you ran out of toilet paper is because most of you were peeing and pooing at home. You weren't doing it outside, and you tend to treat yourself a little bit nicer at home. You buy that 2-ply, 3-ply stuff as opposed to the 1-ply out in most commercial areas. Because, I mean, if you're going to treat any part of yourself well, treat your ass.
Get a bidet. Get a bidet. Easy solution.
I mean, come on. So, what is all this
This
data
guy
mean?
owns a bidet.
I come back over to the port optimizer put out by the Port of Los Angeles. I think it's probably the best gauge if you want to go to one port in the United States to really get a measurement, because it is one of the largest ports in the United
You still have to wipe, though? Yeah, but, like, you cut down on the amount of wiping. Also, like, depending on the quality of the toilet paper, sometimes you just have a nightmare scenario, right? Like, sometimes you have a poop, and it's like, wow, I'm going to be here for, like, 5 minutes wiping. That's just life. So maybe there are, like, vegans in chat, and they're like, wait, what? What are you talking about? I rip off 1 square of 1-ply toilet paper to minimize my environmental impact per wipe, and I lightly dab my butt, and I'm totally fine. But, you know, some of us live in the real world, okay?
United States, you see right here for week 18, the week we're currently in, we're down 10.8% as compared to last year. But the big one is week 19, May 4th to May 10th, down 31%. This is the number you keep hearing when they keep talking about the fact that 30% or 35% of cargo is down. That's what they're showing you right there. The third week out, you got to be careful with that number. It fluctuates and changes all the time. You'll see it's up 6.24%. Some of these ships, some of these 23 ships that are listed here will probably get blank sail. They will not actually depart. That's their plan to leave within the next 40 to 45 days, but some of them will not sail. And that's
also, it's not just about how many of these ships sail, it's about what they have on them, right? Because again, a lot of these ships have scheduled they have scheduled rounds. Like you would expect them to go over here even if they have nothing on them. So it's more about the tonnage than it is. So wait, if anything, doesn't that imply that the 35% down number is actually worse than it seems? Because if we're only talking about scheduled vessels being 31 or whatever percent lower than last time, but we also have to account for a fact that a lot of these vessels are going to be less full. So we're getting fewer ships, but on those ships, there will be less cargo as well. So it could be as much as like 40, 50% down from last year, same time.
Here will probably get blank sail. They will not actually depart. That's their plan to leave within the next 40 to 45 days, but some of them will not sail. And that's one of the reasons why you got to be careful reading these charts and numbers. So I hope this gives you a little bit of data so that you can get a good handle on it. I plan to do port updates quite frequently, maybe not every day, but every other day, so that you have a good gauge what's going on. The next thing we're about to see happen here is a drop in cargo coming into the East and Gulf Coast ports. Who's going to be affected most by this? First places is going to be affected is the port workers and those in logistics, the truck drivers, rail, warehouse workers. They're going to see it first because they're the ones going to be the most impacted.
But I didn't even think about that, dude. A bunch of truckers are going to lose their jobs very quickly because a lot of truckers are basically like contractors, the way their jobs operate. And they're just going to not have, because unlike shipping, like with boats, where you have to move the ships back and forth no matter what to get the empty containers around, it's not like that with trucks, at least not necessarily and not to the same extent. They're not going to pay truckers the same amount to drive empty trucks all over the United States. There's going to be like 200,000 truckers that are going to get laid off within the next 2 months or some shit. Most truckers are Republicans, fuck them. Yep. Yes, sir! That's what I was thinking. Fuck those guys. Good.